What is the greatest challenge faced by the commons today? The reference to challenges to the commons, along with the reference to commons altogether, is in the fourth paragraph. So let's look at the options. Option A says, the need for governance by international entities. This is incorrect. We can see this from two references. We see here, in that respect, the best that can be said for the Earth Summit is that it made visible the vested interests that stand in the way of the moral economies that local people are seeking to re-establish in the face of the day-to-day degradation of their rivers, lakes, streams, etc., which is basically the commons. By contrast, figures in government, business, and international organizations whose livelihoods do not depend directly on what is around them tend to view environmental degradation and the protests it provokes as threats to their political interests. For them, the environment is not what is around their homes, but what is around their economies. So it is not governance by international entities or governments or businesses as such that the commons or the people who rely on the commons they require or they need. Absolutely incorrect. They are rather trying to establish their moral economies, can be inferred to be their local economies, not international entities at all. So this is quite contradictory to what is stated in the passage. A is out. Option B says, the loss of the established way of life. This is quite perfect. We can infer this from this line. For those who rely on the commons, such degradation means a loss of dignity and independence, security, livelihood, and health. Or we could generalize all of these, dignity and independence, security, livelihood, and health, and call it the established way of their life, which is quite perfect. So this can be deduced from the passage. From the given reference, B can be qualified. Option C tells us the loss of perennial resources. This is incorrect because first off, in these lines, we don't see any mention of a loss of perennial resources. At best, this is a distortion of this line where we are talking about northern leaders. Northern leaders within UNCED, for example, were preoccupied with how to keep a growing South from tapping resources and filling up waste sinks, which the North has grown accustomed to using, while simultaneously maintaining the global capital flows, which would, so that is irrelevant. But then at best, this is where we see a loss of perennial resources. That's the only reference. There's no reference to that here in the lines that we were looking to get the answer. Then again, this is true for the northern leaders, not necessarily for all of the commons. So this is way too specific. This goes into an example that is used. We see that this reference is mentioned as an example. So this is not directly relevant. Hence, C is out. Option D says, a degradation that leads to massive loss of life. This is close, but it's not exactly true. First off, it is not definitive. We see here, defending the commons is thus often a matter of life and death. So it is a matter of life and death, but often, not always. This states it definitively. A degradation that definitely leads to massive loss of life. Then again, a matter of life and death, we are not certain in which way it is mentioned. It is mentioned here that it means a loss of dignity and independence, security, livelihood, and health. So in certain cases, this might actually literally mean life and death, but maybe not in all cases. So massive loss of life is actually something which takes this fact too literally. It might not necessarily be meant in a literal manner that there is actual question of life and death. It might be just that they are talking about a complete change of their way of life, losing livelihood. That is what we are talking about. So this is quite incorrect. D is out. The correct answer is option B.